So this is the conclusion to Judaism and Catholicism. And as I came on to hit the button, I mistakenly hit live, and they've reviewed last Sunday's cancellation of my lives and restored it. But this just goes back to my theme of technology and terror. You never know what the tech's going to do, what you're allowed to talk about and what you're not allowed to talk about. And will you be punished? Will you lose your account? Will they seize your bank account? So we're going to listen to a little bit of Wagner, and then we're going to get into it. So this is the only piece I've ever done where I had to take notes. I have things to stare at just to remind me where I want to go with this, because it's taken me like all week to really put my mind together of where I want this to go. And we don't want to do a mustache man thing. I'm not interested in that. I published Zionism and Bolshevism by Churchill, published in 1920. And the reason I published that is I wanted you to see that he refers to Judaism as a race. And that's the great lie of the 20th century, is that everything was racial. Just like today, you hear from Netanyahu all the time. There's a book in the library I've been at, it's about this thick, and it's called Jew and Arab. It's a fake racial distinction, right? So, just to get into it in a friendly way, like 1,000 years together kind of a way, Jews and Christians lived together throughout the Mediterranean world and even in Northern and Eastern Europe for 1,000 years together in what you might call ghetto culture. So we'll get into that. But we are in an absolute crisis of constitutional crisis, and even further, not just one party took over or one branch of government. We are in a crisis of whether or not law can be secular. And that's why I'm emphasizing this religious thing. This isn't just for people who are like very Orthodox or traditional Catholics. I don't mean that at all. I mean people who sort of somehow in their emotional intelligence memory can go back to the thing that Jews and Christians share is what's your Roman Empire. Both the Christian tradition in the West and the Jewish tradition in the West go back to the Roman Empire, the destruction of the temple, and then the destruction of the Roman Empire and the Christianization of it. This is what we have in common. This is why we have 1,000 years together. It's actually more than 1,000 years. Under that scenario, it's 1,500 years together. But if you can picture in your mind like the Gettysburg Address, and I don't have it like perfect, but there's a line where he says like, if such a nation so conceived shall endure, by the people, of the people, for the people. Well, that's no longer the problem. So I've given you this Kierkegaard quote a couple times that was in Harold Bloom's book from 1991. And Kierkegaard's referencing the 1848 revolution, which failed in Europe, and says, like the Reformation, we thought it was religious, but it turned out to be political, and the revolution of 1848 we thought was political and turned out to be religious. So let's have some fun with that. So there's, if you like military history, on your short list has to be a guy named J.F.C. Fuller. He was a British tank commander and wrote a 3-volume series called The Brief Military History of the Western World. And it's not just a blow-by-blow of like this battle versus that battle. I think it's like Leptano, where we fought the Muslims in the Mediterranean, and like, you know, he talks about like the cultures and how they, you know, how they're different and so forth. But in the chapter about the Battle of Yorktown, of course, when Washington beat Cornwallis, the last chapter, get this, the last paragraph, he says, the American Revolution was the last chapter of the Protestant Reformation. And I'm not asking you to just believe that, or, I'm not saying you should go, try to write a paper in your graduate history class with that as the thesis. But it's something to think about. In other words, can a legal structure be completely secular? Can church and state really be? And if you ever want to see one of the most ardent arguments against it, was JFK in West Virginia, where he pointed out there's the fewest Catholics in the country, and he said that the separation of church and state should be absolute. Now we have a mishmash mangle of ideas driving executive orders, clearly not written by President Trump, from think tanks, from artificial intelligence, from corporations who want to use technology for terrorism. We have a government being run by a machine. AI is a machine. Over the hill here, they're going to decommission some big coal-fired plants, drive them with natural gas out of the Marcellus, which we have this massive surplus of natural gas because of it, and build data centers. Facebook's going to build a data center that's almost as big as Manhattan. And they never say it's to, improve quality of life for young people or old people or something like that. No, the big beautiful bill was gutted our social safety net. We're moving against both Catholics and both Catholics and Jews through the 20th century were the bulwark of the Democratic Party, the New Deal, social safety net, etc. Were there some real absolute Marxists in there? Yes. Yeah. But the real progressive socialist thing, FDR famously said to them in the early parts of the New Deal, you're going to have to make me do it, meaning I'm a blue blood Democrat who really is about this far away from being a Republican. As you know, my cousin Teddy was one of the greatest Republican presidents of all time. So if you really want to drive this New Deal, you're going to have to make me do it. So the end of the Roman Empire is what is really two religions grew out of this in the Western world. Two religions share this Western, and I think the bigger question, here's my beautiful note-taking. See if you can see that. No, you can't see it. I just have like a Star of David and a cross beside each other. Because what the real crisis isn't between Jews and Christians. The real crisis is between people who want to live in a Western-style world, sort of like a Professor Jeffrey Sachs, who's clearly, Jewish, and all the very observant Jews who are like panicked about Israel and everything it's doing. It's like every cliche for 1,000 years is coming true. Then you have Catholics, which have always been very suspect of democracy. And for that reason, if Catholics weren't allowed to vote like in New Jersey until like 1870 or something like that. But we no longer have, Alexander Dugan talks about this, we no longer have, the secular system no longer has a way to defend itself. And they are installing what I said is a heresy that has included Christians, Jews, and Muslims all working together. And the final thought I have for you is this. The God of this new system is technology, right? It's the thing that humans have. In our tradition, like we have this very pessimistic, in the Christian Catholic tradition, we have this very pessimistic view of human nature. Like fire from the gods, we have technology. So these people, these Palantir tech bro people, have dismissed all other human concepts other than technology itself. And what are they going to use the technology for? Terror. This is why this is the greatest threat to the United States that we've ever encountered, because it's domestic. Israel is going to unravel over the next several years. It has no physical structure to maintain its situation. The real crisis is now in the United States. It's going to require all shapes of people.